It's the Baseball Talk Radio Show and the special World Series 2017 edition. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Baseball Talk Radio Show. It's the special World Series edition for 2017. And if you're watching the YouTube video, no, we do not have a special guest in my place. The great, the one, the only, our president, Donald J. Trump. And you'd have to see the video on YouTube to see it. But how are you, Gary?
I'm very good. Rich or President Trump, I don't know which to say, but I'm very well, thank you.
Well, I have a nice, I got to owe this all to Manycam. So if you're out there and you like the mask that you see and you're watching the YouTube special edition of the World Series show, yes, indeed, Manycam is responsible for this. But I'm kind of excited for the World Series tonight. How about you, Gar?
Certainly am. It's going to be a great series, I think. Good combination of teams, the Astros and the Dodgers. The Astros play some good defense, and I like the way they play old-fashioned baseball. They hit and run, they bunt, they got speed, they play defense, make contact, and they pitch pretty good too. So Dodgers, they got some good pitching, of course, with Kershaw and Hill, and they play some good D as well. So it should be an interesting series, Rich.
Yes, it should be. And as we were talking about on our last program with the NLCS and the ALCS, that was quite a battle that the Yankees put up there. And they only had to win one more game. What happened to the New York Yankees is what I'm still scratching my head over.
Well, they didn't hit in Houston. It comes down, it's as simple as that. I think they scored 4 runs in the 4 games there. Something along, I might have missed 1 or 2 runs, but something along that lines. And you can't win that way. They hit at home, but they couldn't hit in Houston. And, you know, that was the series. Plus, don't forget, they ran into a guy named Verlander that they could not hit at all. He was awesome in these playoffs so far. He'll be pitching in Game 2 of the World Series, I believe. So, really, when you think about it, the Dodgers really want to get tonight's game with Kershaw, because with Verlander going tomorrow, that could be really tough. But that's mainly what happened. They just didn't hit in Houston. They didn't play well at all. And Verlander was just unhittable.
That's for sure. And that's been the success of the Astros, getting Verlander. And to be honest with you, I didn't realize that the Astros had Verlander. I didn't follow them much. They weren't one of my favorite teams, even though they were one of the better teams in baseball. But yeah, just getting Verlander put them over the top. But you still can't discount getting back to the Yankees. All they had to win was one more game, and they just discount Game 7. They could have just easily won one more game, and the bats went silent. As you said, it just seemed like a bad spell came over that Yankee team, and that's baseball, though. That's the beauty of baseball. You can play great for a couple games in a row, get to a 6th game like that, and just freeze up. There's nothing you can do. It's like you can't buy a base hit. You can't score runners that you have on base. When things are going bad for a baseball team like they went for the Yankees, there was just no fixing the Yankees.
Yeah, and you know, they struck out a lot, and their big power hitters didn't do too much in the last 2 games in Houston. So, you know, you add that all together, Rich, it's tough to win. And they're young, they swinging a lot of bad pitches still, and Houston, as I say, Verlander had them, you know, really swinging all over the place. So, you know, Houston did what they had to do. They come back, they won those games, and at home, All the games were won at home by the home team. So 7 games, and they took out the Yankees and did it quite easily in Game 7. I think it was 8-0 at one point. So I forget what the final score was, but yeah, they really did a nice job, and now they're on to face the Dodgers, who swept away, almost swept away the Cubs. The Cubs won one game, went 5 games, but the Dodgers really have been dominating in these playoffs.
Yes, they have been. And getting over to the NLCS, the Cubs stumbled in that one. They looked like they had regained their old form there for a while, but they just sort of, to me, didn't not necessarily fire on all cylinders, but they became very quiet on offense as well. I think they sat back a little bit, expecting things to happen, and it just didn't happen. Maybe for whatever reason, certain players were waiting for other players to kick it off. But the same thing with the Cubs. They sort of seemed to slip into a malaise there during the series, and they couldn't recover from it. So we're not going to have a back-to-back World Series champion for this year and last year because of that.
And Rich, the Cubs just weren't the same team as they were last year. Their pitching wasn't as strong this year. Arrieta didn't have the same kind of year. Lester didn't pitch as well as he did last year. So they just weren't the same kind of team. And you know, sometimes it's that hangover, that World Series championship hangover that they have. You know, you're busy all winter with everybody wants a piece of you. There are appearances and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, you have to keep on top of those things. You don't have as much time to rest. You don't have much time because, let's face it, you don't know if you're going to be back there again. So if you can make the money at card shows or whatever appearances, you're going to take advantage of it when you can. But it could lead to, you know, an off season the next year. And, you know, they kind of, if you really think back to last year, they really pitched out of their minds. I mean, and they didn't get that same kind of pitching this year. And I think that hurt them. It hurt them in the regular season. They did win the division. But you could see in the playoffs, they weren't the same kind of team. And the Dodgers, you know, really showed them up. And in a funny way, the Dodgers are kind of played this year kind of the way the Cubs were last year. So maybe it's just a shift in domination for a season or two. Maybe we're going to have shifts because in 15, the Mets dominated the Dodgers in the playoffs and went right in the Cubs and beat them and went right through to the World Series. So maybe it's just going to be a rotation of these things.
That's quite possible. And Gary, you'll have to forgive me. I've been on Forbes.com with some World Series notes here, but I just read a news flash come across Forbes.com. Netflix is going to be spending $6 billion on content coming up in the next year or two or a couple years. That's a huge amount. Maybe they can put our show on. We'll give them a discount.
Yeah, we give a big discount.
What, about 100,000 a piece per episode? Do you think that'll do it?
I'll take that for the whole season.
They just don't sell yourself short. They just said Chris Rock got $40 million for only 2 shows.
Oh boy,
on one of the networks there. So don't sell yourself short.
All right, I won't. But
100,000 a piece per show. Yeah, we're on Netflix.
We're good.
We'll sign the dotted line.
Yes. Where do we sign? Just send the contracts.
Anyway, this is the 113th World Series that they're kicking off here. And it's the first time, these are out of the press notes, by the way, since 1970 that the World Series will see 2 teams that won over 100 games each square off. The Dodgers had, of course, 104 wins this past season in the regular season, and the Astros won 101. So it's been a long time for 2 teams to square off that have each won 100 games or more since 1970. That goes back a few years.
And I don't think we're gonna have to worry about rainouts. I mean, there is a possibility in LA, but the chances of rain in Southern California are quite slim. And then, of course, Houston, you don't have to worry because they have a dome. So I don't think we'll have a weather problem. And it's 101 degrees in LA tonight for game one, and I guess it'll be fairly warm in Houston. So, and again, they have climate control if they wish. So at least we'll get the games in time, and nothing to worry about. And it should be a really good series, I think. A lot of people think the Dodgers are going to go right through it. Again, I don't know. When you got a guy like Verlander there, that's the big stopper.
That's for sure. And the home field advantage, as you said, going to the Dodgers, kicking it off in LA. I heard a little pregame talk from Kutchel, however you pronounce his name, the pitcher for the Astros in game one. He said he welcomes the heat because they're used to it in Houston. He shouldn't have a problem. So we'll have to see if Houston comes out and can somehow take game one from the Dodgers. That would be huge. It might be a series changer because, as you said, Gary, a lot of the quote-unquote experts are picking the Dodgers. And why not? They've reeled off one of the best seasons ever. They have the highest payroll in baseball, probably, I think I heard or read somewhere, over $200 million. That's a huge payroll for any baseball team. We're almost getting into the price of stadiums used to cost $200 million just 20 years ago. So you're talking about a huge ball club there in money and investment.
Yeah, certainly, and they have the players to do it. They're hot, they're hitting, but we'll see. That's why they play the game. And Rich, I believe the games are going to be on Fox, the local Fox affiliate, but they're also on something called YouTube TV, which I guess it's YouTube's version of Hulu and that type of thing. I don't know. Maybe it's a paid service or whatever, but YouTube's got something to do with the YouTube TV, some new service that I really don't know much about, but they're going to be broadcasting these games as well.
Yeah, I did read that, and that's a tremendous coup for them. Of course, Fox has the World Series, and they carry Fox on their network, and I believe they're offering online a free month to try out their service. So if you're somewhere listening to our show and maybe your television connection is not on, or you're looking for a place that you could watch the World Series for pretty reasonable price, free is about as reasonable as you get. You just go to youtube.com. And of course, that's where we tape this program as well, right through YouTube. So they have about 35 channels, Gary. I was looking at their offerings. They're getting more and more as time goes on. And, for $35 a month, if you don't watch too many different channels, you can get your basic necessity channels and, have a good basic television watch for only $35 a month.
Still need the cable, though. I mean, you still need the
internet.
Yeah. So, but maybe that's good. The competition for that kind of stuff is gonna maybe lower our cable bills.
Well, we'll see. As time goes on, it's getting more interesting. A lot of different companies jumping in, like Netflix, getting all that funding for original programming and more programs. $6 billion. It's huge, huge amount. And I keep saying huge. Maybe that mask has affected me, the Trump mask. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this World Series. In fact, as we're doing the program, we're taping the program. I was telling Gary that maybe we'll tune into a little of the live action here, and I think the ball game is just about ready to start, or maybe it is. Altuve looks like he's up to bat. Let's tune in for a quick second or two to the LA broadcast here. and they are on programming commercial right now. So obviously the game has not started.
Yeah, no, it started. They're between the top of the first to the bottom of the first.
Okay, so we're in the middle. My MLB.TV tells me that Altuve is still at bat here, or maybe, yeah, it's not updated yet. But, well, it looks like the Astros didn't score in the top of the first.
Oh, 1, 2, 3, Rich.
Very good. So maybe we'll get a little bit of audio in a few seconds for you here on the podcast and our YouTube version. And Gary, we're getting good starts on this game for the East Coast. It was starting at 8:08 p.m., but that's only 5:08 p.m. Out on the West Coast. So we're going to have some sunlight for a couple of these games. That's pretty decent. I'm really excited about that.
It almost seemed like the old days where they played in the afternoon, you know. And let's hope the games are fairly crisp and clean and quick. So it doesn't go into that darkness, but yeah, that's none played in the Eastern Time Zone this year though, Rich. We'll be getting the early start times, but there'll be a time difference at the stadium, even when they go to Texas. So it should be interesting. But as you say, it's 5 o'clock there, and an hour ago there were a lot of empty seats. You know, that's kind of a late arriving crowd, but I would think for the World Series, people would be getting there a little bit earlier.
Yeah, and I guess the problem is if you've ever driven around that stadium, a 5 o'clock start is like driving into a bee's nest. Well, you're used to big traffic in the New York area, Gary. I would say, you know, combine Route 3, Route 4, and maybe the BQE all together, and that's what you've got around Dodger Stadium there, in and around that area. It's just it's a traffic nightmare. So maybe a lot of them are still in traffic.
Well, it looks like they got a pretty full house already, so maybe a lot of people, you know, this would be the kind of thing for me if I was going to the game, you'd leave like 1 in the afternoon to get there, and make sure you get in, pack the cooler with some sandwiches and whatnot, and sit in the car and enjoy some of the festivities in the parking lot. And the first pitch, I don't know who hit it, but the Dodgers are up 1-0.
Oh,
Chris Taylor, first pitch. Dallas Keuchel's first pitch goes for a home run.
well, there we go. Dallas Keuchel. He said he was thrilled to be pitching in the heat, but yeah, Chris Taylor homers right off the bat for the Dodgers. Wow, let's see if we can tune in a little of that.
At 7 for 10 with runners in scoring position. Turner takes a strike, and it's 0-2.
And there's the KTLA feed there. It sure didn't take long, did it? And no, it didn't.
No.
And me and the wife always make a World Series bet, and I, of course, have the Dodgers this year.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure who you're rooting for. You didn't actually say.
Well, I like the Astros. I do like the way they play. I like the scrappiness. I like the defense and the quickness and everything. So I kind of would like to see them, even though I am a National League guy, but I just can't bring myself to root for the Dodgers.
I hear you. Well, at least we have a good thing to talk about on the program then. I'm rooting for the Dodgers. You're going for the Astros. That's great. I mean, it's just, you know, I can see a lot of Astros fans out there, a lot of younger people. Just a few years ago, there were 55 and 111. I was reading this week. I didn't realize that they were that bad a couple years ago, but it's good for Houston as well. I did hear one of the interest stories, public interest, if you will, about the storm, the hurricane that hit there. And they're still recovering from that around there. And this is what the Houston area needed to bring itself back. We both know whenever there's a disaster where you live, it's a disaster, and something like a baseball game, specifically the World Series, is going to bring up the spirits. It's going to bring back a little normalcy to some people's lives. So, that was part of the talk that I heard as well this week for the World Series preview. So I'm so glad to hear Houston getting back on its feet. And there was even a few stories of Puerto Rico and some of the players that are on the Astros, I believe, or possibly the Dodgers, that helped out down in Puerto Rico. I think they flew a plane down there with water on it. They all got together, and somehow a lot of donations poured in for, they expected to get a private plane down there. I was listening on MLB Network, and it turned into a big jumbo jet full of water. So they did their part to help out the people down in Puerto Rico. So a lot of public interest stories come out of the World Series. And, of course, a lot of the history of the game comes out in the World Series. The last time the Dodgers were in there, talk of Sandy Koufax when the Dodgers were great as well. So a lot of that history comes up in the game as well, Gary.
Yeah, and tons of it. They were just shown before 88 with Kirk Gibson's home run. No, should have been the Mets in there against the Oakland team. I think it was Oakland, right? 88.
Be honest with you, I was rooting for the Mets, but I forget. I forget who they were playing, to be honest with you.
But the Mets lost to the Dodgers in that play after beating them all year. And that was a heartbreaker for us. But, Kirk Gibson went out and hit that home run on one leg or whatever was wrong with him. I forget. And Hershiser was unbelievable that season. So, he's the one that beat the Mets almost single-handedly. That and Mike Scioscia's home run that killed us against Gooden in, I forget what game it was, of the ALCS. We had the win, and he hit the home run. I think it was the 8th or 9th inning or something, and really sank our boat.
Yep. 1988, the Dodgers over the Mets. Of course, the Dodgers or the Mets winning it all in 86. I was pulling for the Mets back then. But yeah, as you said, a lot of that history comes up, and that's good for the game, regardless of when certain things happen. It brings more people closer to the game.
Yeah, and then there's not a lot of history with Houston in the World Series. Of course, they were in a few years ago against the Cardinals, I believe it was, or was that the White Sox? I get confused. They might have been in when they were still in the National League. Anyway, they were in a couple of years ago, and no, I think it was against the Cardinals. Anyway, so they don't have a long history of it, but it's great to see different teams in every couple of years, and unless of course it was the Mets, then I just hope the American League team kept changing, and not the Mets. The Mets could be in it every year, just But anyway, I digress.
It's interesting that some people can really recite, certain years, certain teams. I'm in awe at people that can do that, because I can't. I remember 2002. I think it was a California World Series. If I can go back, I've got the baseball reference up right now. Let me see if I'm right. Yeah, Anaheim Angels against the San Francisco Giants. Only because I was out in LA that year, and they had a lot of memorabilia lined up. So that sticks in my memory. 2002, when we were out there, and we were checking out some of the memorabilia, even though we were, a little far from the Angels Stadium at the time. And LA is still just a 40-minute drive from there. So it was almost like, it was an LA World Series back then. But yeah, the history of the game is just awesome. I've got the listings up right now. What year was that you were thinking of with the White Sox?
Was it 2008?
I've got 2005, the Sox and the Astros.
Oh, so that must have been it.
Yeah, 2008, of course, the Phillies won the World Series. I remember that as well.
That of course, you would remember.
But yeah, the 2005 World Series, now what, 12 years ago, the Sox and the Astros. So, of course, the White Sox were victorious in that. And yeah, if you were to ask me the opponents of the 2005 World Series, I would have no idea.
The funny, I could probably go through the 60s and 1960s and remember those, but anything after the 70s, it's just forget it.
Yeah. You almost have to have a nice guide in front of you, because as the years go by, it's harder to remember, last year, let alone 12 years ago. But yeah, it's going to be a great World Series. 1-0 Dodgers already as this series kicked off. But if you were right and the Astros win the World Series, who do you think is going to be the MVP? I think I know your answer for this.
Ooh, and normally I'd say Altuve, but I'd have to consider Verlander.
Yeah, I think you might be right with that. If the Dodgers won the World Series, I would have to pick somebody that I think should have been the sole NLCS MVP, and that would be Justin Turner. For some reason, he just has a magic about him here in the postseason.
Please, not we're still having issues about Justin Turner here in New York, but look, they let him go here. He didn't fit in to the plans, and he was not the player that he's become out there. So, would he have become the player that he is if he stayed in New York? You'll never know that. Nolan Ryan always said that the best thing that happened to him was the Mets traded him because he couldn't play in New York. He didn't like the noise, and he loved the people. He just didn't. He was more comfortable in a different type of situation, and Anaheim was perfect for him, and he went on to the Hall of Fame. So not everybody can play everywhere. I know LA and New York, it's pretty much the same, but maybe a fresh set of eyes on you can give you a tip or a hint or something, and can let you go. And they let him play, and he's playing a good third base, and the Mets are looking for a third baseman. But what are you going to do? He was blocked here by Wright at the time, and like I said, he was okay here, but he was not the same ball player, and he just meshed out there. It happens.
Yes, indeed. Well, we'll have to see who ends up winning this World Series. Kershaw on the mound. So far, he's at 1.1 innings pitched. He has one strikeout, and something I kind of dislike, pitch counts. He's got 15 pitches thrown already. Do you notice how most announcers now are focused on pitch counts?
Pitch counts and the velocity of the ball leaving the bat, or whatever they call that. Oh, please. Yeah, they're all crazy about that stuff. But in this game, you know what? You got the whole winter to recover, so you're going to throw pitches tonight.
That's for sure. And, I never knew the Astros even had Brian McCann. He's up right now for the Astros. And let's take a tune in real quick on a radio feed from the Houston feed here. See what they're saying about this.
Strike pitch.
And that's grounded right side into the shift. Second baseman, fourth side playing at short right. He fields, throws to first, and the inning is over. Another 1-2-3 inning for Kershaw. He's retired all 6 he's faced. And we're through game 1 of the World Series on Sports Talk 790, presented by...
And there you go. There's the Houston feed. Sports Talk 790 down there in Houston, talking live about the World Series. So, Gary, they seem like they got it covered there on Fox. And how'd you like the announcing this year? I know last year we had some issues with certain announcers, but this year it seems like it's gotten a little better to me.
It seems like it hasn't been as bad. They used numerous guys, but Fox changed it a couple of years ago. They got rid of who the heck was in the booth with Joe Buck. I mean, Joe Buck is still there, but I like John Smoltz is good, and the 2-man booth. I noticed even TBS went to a 2-man booth this year. Last year they had 3 guys. They had Ron Darling and the announcer, I think whose name escapes me, and Cal Ripken Jr. And Cal Ripken Jr. was out this year, so it was just a 2-man booth. I think it's better with a 2-man booth, for the postseason. I think the argument that comes out is everybody's team thinks that the announcers are against them.
Yeah, that's true.
and I just think that what happens in these national broadcasts, especially for the playoffs, because it's a few weeks, is that these guys don't know the teams. We listen day in and day out. We listen to our home team guys, and they know the team because they lived with them all season, and through the summer and all of that. And you just don't get that when you go to a national broadcast because, frankly, they might know all the stats and all of this, but they really don't know the teams. Now, the only criticism I heard this year was I think David Cohn did a couple of games, and I don't know what network it was. And I don't know. David Cohn, if you ever listen to him, same thing he does Yankee games as well, but he regurgitates like the press notes. I mean, everything's a fact and figure, and it's just after a while it's a bit grating. It's just too much. Like, David, throw away give us some insight. Don't read right from your press notes. Well, we know he hit 322 with guys on base and runners in scoring position with 2 outs and 2 strike count on him, and his hair parted on the left side. Did you know that? I don't want to keep hearing that for every batter that comes up there.
Yeah, it's
the only thing.
I'm sort of a fan, and I'm sorry that Vin Scully retired. I think this would have been the perfect time for him to unretire. Just for the World Series, come back, give the fans one last Vin Scully moment, so to speak. And he was like a rapid fire machine gun. I mean, he'd have stuff at the top of his head that about every player that came up. And as you said, it wasn't stuff in the press notes. It was stuff that he learned and things that he learned along the way, maybe a conversation he had with a player or research that he did on his own that necessarily wasn't on a press note.
From what I heard, that they did ask him, or they were considering asking him, and before they could ask him, he said no, he didn't want to. He was retired, and that was it. So I don't think they would have gotten him, no matter what, out of retirement to go do it. And maybe it's better that way. It's time for the next generation to come in and do it. And he did a lot of World Series calls for other teams, so he just felt it was not his time.
And I was listening to this afternoon on MLB Network radio about Justin Verlander and whether or not he would be a shoo-in for the Hall of Fame. I think he's just about at the cusp of the Hall of Fame right now. Some other great pitchers that are compared to him, though, on baseballreference.com that I just loaded the screen on, they're not in the Hall of Fame. Mike Mussina, longtime pitcher for the Orioles, most commonly compared to, so to speak, Brett Saberhagen, another great pitcher, but never made it to the Hall of Fame. Ron Guidry, old-time Yankee, great pitcher again, is not in the Hall of Fame. So you got Verlander that's just about at the cusp, so to speak, of Hall of Fame standards or shoe-in, so to speak. I think he's got another year or two or more left in him. He's only been in the league for 13 seasons. He's 34 this year. I think he's got another couple years to pitch. So I think we're looking at a Hall of Famer on the mound in that respect, and Verlander. And, of course, on the other side, the Dodger pitcher as well. We've got possible Hall of Famers in Kershaw and Verlander here going head-to-head in this series.
Yeah, could be. And, if he can win a world title, Verlander, and dominate, he's been a dominating pitcher. I know some of those guys that you mentioned were good pitchers, but Mussina never really dominated the league. Like he was pretty consistent, like a 15, 16 game winner. Verlander there was a stretch was totally dominant. I mean, he's got what, Cy Young or two.
Yeah. I just hopped over to the Kershaw page. He's got very similar numbers to, if you looked at it, he's just on the verge of being what you would call a Hall of Fame pitcher, most similar by ages right now. And, of course, he's probably got another 5 or 6 years to pitch in his career because he's only been in the league 10 seasons, and he's 29 this year. So Kershaw definitely has time on his side compared with, if you want to look at it that way. But both pitchers are on the verge of becoming shoe-in Hall of Fame players right now in Verlander and Kershaw. Slight edge to Kershaw because he's got more seasons to finish, and by numbers, his career already is better than Verlander's.
And what is the new hot number that we use for wins for a pitcher now?
Well, it used to be, 300 wins?
Nobody's going to get to 300 anymore, though, with the amount of games that they pitch in a year,
Right, yeah. The amount of wins that they're getting, I guess you could probably drop it down to 235, 240 maybe.
Say 225, 235, something in that range. And I think Verlander will do that. He's at 188. He'll be over 200 next year. He'll be close to it. And I think if he can get a World Series, he was a Cy Young Award, an MVP. So I think he's very close to it. And I think, if he can get that this year, especially if he can dominate in this and take away the World Series MVP as well, I think he'll be in. I think Kershaw is headed down that road as well. I think he'll be, he's got to really pitch well, though. He's got to prove himself in this series. This is a big series. He stumbled before in the playoffs, and this is the time for him to really show his stuff.
And, of course, he's making a ton of money. He's been making, let's see here, I'm on his salaries last couple years, $30+ million a year to pitch a baseball. So let's see. Going back to 2015, he started earning $32 million, $34.5 million for 2016, and this year with the Dodgers, $35.5 million. So not doing too bad. It's not a bad thing when you're a great pitcher.
Wow, yeah. And Verlander's not exactly in the poorhouse either. He made 28 mil this year, and he will the next couple of years. And he'll be with the Astros, and he could have a chance there to really pad some stats in the World Series, in the playoffs at least, because they've got a good young team. So it'll be interesting to watch and see. But I think you're onto something there with the Hall of Fame with these two guys. I think they're both going to be headed down there.
Yeah, and Kershaw here, I'm still on his page on baseballreference.com. Most similar by age, Tom Seaver, he's compared with, and Pedro Martinez. So two Hall of Famers right there. Some other pitchers he's compared with that aren't in the Hall of Fame. Here's somebody from the 70s for you, Gary. Vida Blue from the Oakland A's, right in that mix, did not get into the Hall of Fame. And let's see, a couple other similar pitchers by numbers: Adam Wainwright, Johan Santana, and Johnny Cueto. So you can see that, according to wins and things like that, they're compared to even Max Scherzer and David Price, all compare with Kershaw, how he's pitching right now. So going to be an interesting World Series. I'm so glad it starts off in the West Coast for the daylight games. I just love to see baseball in the daylight. It'll be in the day for a couple hours anyway during this game. And then it'll shift over, like you said, to Houston, Minute Maid Park. Maybe they'll have the dome open if it's not too humid down there.
Yeah, it could be. And that'll be interesting to see how that affects the ball flight and all of that. And they took out Towles Hill, so the outfield is flat again out there in center field. So, but that's a nice ballpark, and it really should be interesting. I don't know how often, if at all, the Dodgers have played there, but and they'll be using a DH. So we'll have to see who the Dodgers choose as their DH. There were rumors that Corey Seager may be used, as he was placed on the roster, but he's got a iffy back. So how much playing time he gets, they're going to watch him very carefully. But yeah, it's going to be good.
Very good. So you got our picks for the series here on the Baseball Talk Radio Show. We want to thank everybody for tuning into this program. And Gary, any last-minute comments on the World Series for 2017?
No, that's it, Rich. Just in some other news, the former Met and Cincinnati Red and Houston Astro, Ray Knight was arrested for assault and battery. Had a altercation with a man, 32-year-old man, at his home, I believe, at 4 a.m. in the morning. So more to come out about that as we go along. And that's about it, Rich.
Wow, that's surprising. I guess, Ray Knight, definitely a well-known name from the past Mets. And your Mets even hired a manager.
Yes, they hired a manager. The Cleveland Indians pitching coach is now the New York Mets manager, Mickey Callaway. And the Red Sox have named Alex Cora as their new manager. And so we wait on the Nationals and the Phillies to make a decision now on who were they going to hire. And are the Phillies interviewing, Rich?
I think they've interviewed a dozen people so far. I've been reading in the papers and online, a lot of different names coming into Philadelphia for interviews. No big clear favorites yet. Still very much a mystery. I guess maybe they're going to wait till the World Series is over, which is appropriate. I don't think teams should try to one-up the World Series. Maybe they have their business to attend to, but I think out of respect for the game, they should either do it before the series starts or wait till it's over. And probably the Phillies, I guess, are going to wait till the World Series are over now.
Yeah, I think the Mets wanted to get it done so they could look forward to getting everybody on the same page, and so that's why I think they did it so soon, and so it's I'm glad they did it, got it done, and now they move on looking for a bench coach and a batting coach and so on, Mr. President.
Well, I think we'll end this on a happy note again. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Thanks for your vote for the Baseball Talk Radio show. Gary, you have a good week.
Thank you. You too, Rich, Mr. President.